What's going on, Charlie? Today we're doing a how-to video on your 2009 Dutch Star that you got to steal before anyone else got their hands on it. Of course, you paid us money. This is your bus officially, and there's a couple people who might be willing to pay a little more money than you did to buy this thing. Let's go ahead and walk through a couple things on the coach that I think would be important or might help you along the road. I know you're a very smart guy. You've got a ton of mechanical experience on objects and machinery that make this look like a fidget spinner. But that being said, there are specific things to an RV, and there are some things to know, such as where your pull handle is for your front generator access. So it's up here in the top left of this first compartment on the driver's side of the coach. You pull that, and then it will release this, opening it, giving you access to the generator. Now you do have an air chuck right here, connect to air on. You got a breaker here for the generator and your coolant and oil fill. You can also see your steering linkage, which you can grease every once in a while. And you got access to the air conditioning system for the dash air up there. Now let's take a peek at a couple other things. We walked through a lot of this when you came and looked at the coach. But I want to show you this right now. Those are your two slide out controls boards, the control boards for the driver's slide or the driver's side slide outs. There's one more control board like this on the other side of that chassis rail. There's actually two thick chassis rails. And your inverter is located right up here in between the chassis rails. So if you ever need to get to it, it's right there. And but yeah, you turn it on from the inside, so you won't ever have to go up in there unless you need to work on it or reset it. And I wanted to show you one more thing. You've got access to your slide motor right here. And I recommend, unless you're in a super unlevel spot, letting the airbags be fully risen, then turning it off and extending the slides before you level. That's just my recommendation. There's different opinions out there, but that's the way to do it for me. Now this is our plumbing bay. So this is where you're gonna dump your tanks. You've got your black sewer tank here on the left, and you've got your gray holding tank for your sink water and shower water here on the right. This little extra arm piece is just an accessory, and there's a cap on the bottom of it there. You've got a sewage flush right here. So you want to make sure that you're not overfilling your black tank, because this goes directly to the black tank. You're going to hook a hose up to this, open this black tank, and then flush out the black tank with fresh water. Now right here is our fresh tank fill valve. What this is going to do is let you fill your freshwater tank using your city water connection. So the city water connection, when it's in this position right here, is going to give all your taps pressure. So you've got a hose, you've got pressure, whether you're at a campground or at your house, you plug your hose in here, and then you turn your water pump off. Now, since you've plugged your hose in here and opened the tap up on it, you've got pressure coming from city. You don't need your pump and you don't need your fresh tank. But let's say you're camping and you're sitting there using the taps, no problem, just using city pressure, and now you want to fill your tank up before you take off. Well, all you do is come here, push that to the left. As you can see, our water pump goes into free spin because this has changed this valve to now direct this city pressure to filling your tank up. So you can fill your tank up, and then when you're done filling your tank, you move this back over here. This is always going to be in this position unless you're filling the tank. The only time you put it over here is when you want to use this connection here to fill your water tank. Now these are low point drains, so if you winterize the coach, you open this up and it will drain out a good chunk of your tap water, your plumbing system's water. You can turn your pump off and on up here, and there's also switches in the coach for the pump, the water pump. And then right here, we'll shut off water coming from the tank to the pump, and you can also open this valve and stick this down into a can or a bottle of antifreeze and then turn the pump on, so the pump will then suck antifreeze up into the system and winterize it. And you want to use RV antifreeze because that's a more potable antifreeze. It's safer to be in your water system. You don't want to use a coolant that goes into the engine, of course. This is just an outside shower here. And then you've got a water filter here, so all your water coming into the coach will go through there. Now this is our 50 amp power cord reel, or your 50 amp power cord reel. On the left is an automatic transfer switch. This will decide between gen and shore power. It will prefer generator power, but as soon as you shut off generator power, it will switch over to shore power if you're plugged into 50 amp. Here on our engine bay, we got a couple things, but I mainly just wanted to show you here, these two things. This is your diagnostic for the engine. This is our new air conditioner compressor belt. And this right here is the cutoff for chassis batteries. So if you store this for a long time, you can shut off your chassis batteries right here. There's also an air chuck down below where you can connect up like Air Force One system or something like that. Now right here is our battery bay. So over on the left, we've got our 2 chassis batteries wired in parallel to make 12 volt to start the engine. And then on the right, we've got our 4 6-volt batteries. Each 6-volt is paired with another. So you basically got 2 pairs of 6 volts here wired in series to make 12 volt. And then the 2 pairs are paired in parallel. So 12 volt goes into the coach. The diagram, which is probably easier to understand this than me talking about it, is right here on the slide out tray. Now this right here is our furnace system. This is the propane fired furnace. You can take these 4 screws off, they're squares to get to them. This is the back access panel to our RV refrigerator. And remember, this vents heat out the roof. And right down here is the other side where you can see the passenger side rear slide out control board. And on the left here is the control board for our Dometic patio awning. You can actually change the sensitivity of the wind sensor here too. Now this is our 10-gallon propane hot water heater. There's also an electric element in there. So you don't have to use the propane. You can heat up this 10-gallon with electric heat. Your flame burns down in there. You've got a flame sensor here. You've got a pressure release, which you don't really want to use very often at all unless you're in an emergency situation. These are here. If it builds up too much heat, it'll just blow the water out there. You can reset the control board using those 2 buttons if you ever need to. And this right here is the valve that lets propane into the system. So there's only a handful of things that can really go wrong. These are straightforward, simple systems. And you really don't have to burn propane with them. You can just use electric power if you're plugged into shore power all the time. Dual fill tank here. Now the electric step, this step will, when it's in this mode right now, it's called camp mode. It will stay out all the time until you turn the ignition on. Then when you turn the ignition on, it will go in and out when you open and close the door. This is the mode you want to leave it on unless you're worried about somebody swiping it or something in a weird situation. If you want it to go in constantly, which most times you don't want to do because then it'll burn out the motor, what you do is you come in here, you press exterior step switch into the on position. On is where it'll constantly go in and out every time you open the door, regardless of the ignition. Off, it will only come in and out with the door when the ignition is on. That's the mode to leave it in 9 times out of 10. All right, so starting in the bottom right of the control compartment in this coach, we've got a propane switch, so this will turn on the propane for the coach. It's got an electric valve, and remember, you got to have your propane sensor on to have any propane come in the coach. It's got an electronic safety valve. Now these security lights are just patio lights pretty much, self-explanatory, and this is that exterior step switch we already talked about. That is a toggle switch for your slide, the big front slide, and then that is a block heater. Above that is our 12-volt disconnect. So if you store this coach with no power, you turn everything off, you can click that button and it will turn off any power drawing from the coach side batteries. Now above that, I don't know what this switch does. It could be something with the speakers, not sure, we'll have to dig into that further, but it's everything else operates on the coach, so I really don't know what it's for. Like I said, could be for the speakers. Now this is our level test area. So you can go through and check your gray tank, It's got empty on the left, full on the right. It'll show a little bar as well as a percentage. Propane tank is full. It'll show battery voltage, which is 13.5 right now. We're plugged in charging. Freshwater tank is about 27%. And yeah, pretty nice. Maybe you could put a magnifying glass here or something so it's a bigger display for you. Now down below here is the amplifier for our satellite dish right here, this KVH controller. You turn that on there. And actually this was the controller for the old InMotion satellite dish that was taken off this coach. This right here is our propane heater. So this will turn on the propane hot water heater. And what happens is when you turn this on, the red light will come on and then the red light will turn off. If the red light comes back on, you know that propane hot water heater hasn't fired up and you can easily walk out there and hear it. Now this is the electric element that sits in that 10-gallon hot water heater. And yeah, this is what you can run. If you're plugged into shore power, you just run this all the time. And you can actually run both. You can run both the electric and the propane heater to get your hot water at the same time. Now this is our inverter control. So this will let you turn your inverter on to give you 120 volt power throughout the coach, and except for your air conditioning. So this will turn on your microwave, your refrigerator, all that good stuff. And this is an inverter charger. So when you're plugged in or you've got generator power, this will act as the charger and maintainer for your chassis side batteries. And this doesn't have AGS or automatic gen start system, but you can easily add that if you wanted to. It's really a system that's used in rare occasion, but it does happen. And in setup, you can go set up, the main thing is if you ever change the batteries out, you can select your battery type right there and mess with the settings on this. Everything else you can just leave alone. So there are 3 different levels of charging. There's bulk charging, there's absorb charging, and then there's float charging. And those will, in ascending order, use less power. So float charging, it's obviously just floating. Absorb is the middle range, and then bulk is when those batteries are pretty low. Now over here, we've got our surround sound system control. This will let you direct the DVD player to different TVs in the coach. And this unit right here is actually the Winterization controller for your big main Winterization satellite dish up above. This will actually put the dish up and it will automatically track. Now to use this, you've got to have a box. You've got to have a DirecTV or something like that box to plug in. And again, it's still there, it works, but streaming is the way to go. In fact, in the future, you could just rip that sucker off and save you some weight and just make this a smart TV. You can plug a Roku in it or something like that, or just change this TV out. All right, let's go show you where the propane tank sensor is, or the propane sensor is. The propane sensor will monitor if there's any propane leaking up in the coach. There it is. Right down there is your propane sensor. So that has to be on to get any propane in the coach, and it shouldn't turn off. If you're not getting propane for some reason, you check that sensor and make sure it's on. Now here's how to operate your refrigerator here. Right now it is on. That's why that little green dot is on in there. It's indicating that it is on and working properly. You turn it off and on by holding this button. You change the mode between 3 different modes. You got automatic, which will then flash and tell you automatic AC. It's in automatic mode and it's selecting AC. That's what it's telling you. If you don't have any 120 power, it'll go automatic and then LP. There's LP. Okay, so you can leave it on propane if you'd like. So automatic is the way to go. It will automatically switch between 120 and propane on its own. So if you disconnect from shore, it'll just switch over and fire up the little propane fire. And it really doesn't burn a lot of propane. These are quite efficient on that. It's a small little flame. And it doesn't have to run a lot unless you're opening the fridge a lot. But the set temp here, you've got 1 through 9. I've currently got it on 4. This is a personal preference. 4 seems to be freezing it pretty well. But you can go all the way up to 9. Typically, they say it's not good to run it all the way on 9. But you certainly can. So the thermostat here is pretty easy to control. You've got your mode. So mode will shift from auto to heat. Well, it'll go from heat pump, cool, fan only, and heat pump is reversing the cycle of the air conditioner to put heat out the ceiling vents. And this will only work up until it gets below freezing, and then you can't use the heat pumps. You got to use your propane. So right now you see how it's flashing down there too? That means we've selected zone 2 to control. I'll click zone and that takes us to zone 1. Now you can change the fan mode to constantly on low, constantly on high, or auto, where it will only come on when the compressor runs and it needs to get down to temperature or get up to temperature. Then of course this just sets your temperature. That's your set point right there. And on zone 1 is where you've got furnace control here. So furnace, I don't want to turn on right now, will burn propane out of our furnace burner that you saw on the outside of the coach. And that one zone will control the furnace heat for the entire bus. And this is where I like to recommend, instead of using the propane burner to get furnace heat, if you're plugged into shore power, use electric heaters because this is going to save you propane fuel. Now here's a quick tip I wanted to mention. Right here on the left side of the slide, when you're operating the slides, make sure all of these storage cabinets back here are completely secured.